Lucas Thorne's mornings ran with precision. 7:30 driver picked him up 7:45 black coffee on his desk 8 o'clock. Quarterly projections in hand 8:05 boardroom silence as he entered he was ruthless, exact, untouchable. The youngest billionaire in Thorne Industries history and the most feared. But that morning something was off. When he opened his office door, the lights were still low and someone was sleeping on his leather couch. Small. Shoes untied. Jeans too short. A boy maybe 6 or 7. Curled up under a blazer like it was a blanket. Lucas froze. On the glass coffee table in front of the couch lay a single sheet of lined paper. Folded in half. Ink smudged. He picked it up. In rushed handwriting it read, "He's yours. I can't do this anymore. Please don't look for me." No signature. Lucas stared at the boy. Blonde hair. Light freckles. His brows furrowed in his sleep, just like Lucas's own when deep in thought. His assistant knocked lightly on the door. "Sir? You're 8 a.m., cancel everything." His voice was tight. He sat down across from the boy, unsure what to do with his hands, his thoughts, or his heart which hadn't beat this fast in years. And then the child stirred, lifted his head, looked at him, and said, "Are you Lucas Thorne?" Lucas nodded. The boy nodded back and said plainly, "You're my dad." Lucas Thorne wasn't a man who reacted. He strategized. Even now, faced with a boy claiming to be his son, he moved like a CEO facing a hostile merger. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eli." "How old are you?" 7. Lucas did the math fast. 7 years ago, he was still building Thorne Industries, working late nights, burning through assistants and relationships like they were fuel. One name came to mind. Rachel. She was brilliant, fire-willed, unforgettable, and gone suddenly without a word after a brief, intense affair. He hadn't seen her since. The note's handwriting could be hers. Lucas called in his legal team. Quietly. DNA test. Confidentiality agreements. Damage control. "No leaks," he told his lawyers. "If this story breaks, I want deniability." The boy Eli waited patiently. He wandered the office, touching expensive models of the company's drones and gadgets. "Is that your robot?" he asked, eyes wide. "That's a prototype." "Cool. Can I keep it?" Lucas blinked. No one asked him things like that, let alone so casually. "No," he said, then added awkwardly, "but you can touch it." Eli grinned like it was Christmas. That afternoon, the results came back. 99.99% match. Lucas Thorne, the coldest man on Wall Street, had a son. And someone had just handed him over like a business memo. "He's yours." Only this wasn't a contract. It was a life. And for the first time, Lucas didn't know what the hell to do with it. Lucas hadn't heard from Rachel in over 7 years. No calls. No messages. Not even a whisper of closure. And now she dropped a child on his leather office couch like it was daycare with a skyline view. He paced his penthouse apartment that night, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the note again. "He's yours. I can't do this anymore." She didn't sign it. No explanation. No address. Just abandonment in 12 words. He hated how much that note hurt. And how fast his mind filled with her face, her fierce eyes, the way she used to argue with him during meetings, how she always wore red when she wanted to win. Now she was gone. Again. But this time she'd left a shadow behind. A boy with his eyes. Eli was in the guest room, asleep beneath an expensive quilt that looked ridiculous next to his ratty cartoon backpack. Lucas stood in the doorway watching him breathe. He didn't know how to be this person, a father. He didn't know if he wanted to be. But the boy's eyelashes fluttered, his brow furrowed like he was worried even in his dreams. And for some reason that wrecked Lucas more than any quarterly loss ever had. He called a PI that night. "Find her." "Rachel." "Yes. I need to know why." 'Cause deep down, even more than needing to understand the boy, Lucas needed to understand the woman who vanished, and what made her walk away from both of them. Lucas didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his pristine sofa in silence, watching the skyline shift from midnight steel to morning gold. 6:02 a.m., he heard tiny footsteps. Eli wandered into the living room in mismatched socks, hair wild from sleep, clutching a stuffed wolf that had seen better days. He didn't speak at first, just stood there, staring. Lucas cleared his throat. "Do you want breakfast?" Eli nodded slowly. His voice was barely a whisper. "Do you have chocolate cereal?" Lucas didn't even have milk. He picked up the phone, called his assistant, and said 5 words he'd never spoken before. "Buy every cereal that exists." 23 minutes later, Eli was sitting on a marble island surrounded by boxes of cereal, choosing his favorite like a prince inspecting his kingdom. Lucas stood back, unsure if he was doing any of this right. When Eli glanced at him and smiled, just a flicker of something genuine, Lucas felt the shift. The walls he'd spent years building cracked. He wasn't just hosting a child. He was hosting a piece of himself. Cancelled his meetings. Ignored his phone. And when his CFO called about a merger, Lucas said something that shocked even him. "It can wait. I have my son." And the silence on the other end? For once, he didn't care. By noon, news of Lucas Thorne skipping meetings had already rippled through the company like a scandal. But Lucas didn't care. Eli was sitting in his office, drawing a spaceship with crayons they'd bought on an impromptu toy store trip. Lucas was typing, distracted, when a voice interrupted. "You have a visitor." Grace, his longtime assistant, stood at the door with an odd expression. Behind her, a woman waited. Tall. Composed. Eyes sharp as glass. Lucas stood. Cassandra. His ex-Eli's mother's best friend. The last person he expected to see. She stepped into the office, heels clicking like accusations. "You got the boy, I see." Lucas nodded, stunned. "You knew." She gave a half smile, all bite. "I'm the one who told her not to do this." She didn't listen. She never listened to reason when it came to you. Lucas glanced at Eli, who was still busy coloring. "Why didn't she tell me sooner?" Cassandra crossed her arms. "Pride. Fear. You know how complicated it was between you two. She said she saw your face in Eli one day and knew you'd want him if you ever found out. But she thought, maybe it was better you didn't." Lucas sat down heavily. His son had been out there for 7 years. 7 years of birthdays, scraped knees, and bedtime stories he'd missed. Cassandra hesitated, then softened. "He doesn't know much. Just that you were someone far away." She didn't badmouth you, Lucas. Lucas swallowed. "Is she okay?" Silence. Then she's gone. And just like that, the room spun. Gone. Not away. Not hiding. Gone. He looked at Eli, drawing a sun now beside the spaceship. Lucas's world collapsed, quietly, completely. And yet, the boy remained. A reminder. A second chance. Lucas didn't go home that night. Instead, he stayed in his office with Eli curled up on the couch again. But this time, Lucas covered him with a cashmere coat and sat nearby, awake, his mind racing. Cassandra had left after dropping off a manila envelope. Inside were documents. A birth certificate. Photos of Eli growing up. Letters never sent. One stuck out. It was addressed to Lucas, but never mailed. "I never meant to shut you out. But how do you tell someone they've missed half their son's life?" By the time I had the courage, it already felt too late. Lucas reread it until the words blurred. He imagined the version of himself who never found this out. Cold. Unaware. Alone. He wouldn't be that man anymore. In the morning, Eli stirred. Sat up. Rubbed his eyes. "Why do you stay here?" the boy asked. Lucas blinked. "Because I didn't want to leave you alone." Eli nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he said, "I had a dream about a big house with too many stairs. But I liked it because it smelled like pancakes." Lucas smiled faintly. "I think we can arrange that." They had a long way to go. Lucas Thorne was a man who could restructure corporations in a day, but raising a child? That was uncharted territory. Till, as he watched Eli brush his teeth with the help of Grace, Lucas made a quiet vow. No more missed birthdays. No more questions without answers. He had a son. And from now on, he would be a father. Lucas Thorne was many things. Sharp, unshakable, meticulously tailored, but for the first time in his life, he showed up to a board meeting with a juice box stain on his lapel. He didn't care. Eli had accidentally hugged him with sticky hands, and Lucas hadn't flinched. What stunned the board wasn't the stain. It was the boy sitting quietly beside Lucas, drawing dinosaurs on the back of a quarterly report. Someone dared to whisper, "Is that his kid?" Lucas didn't blink. He looked straight at them and said, "Yes, this is my son." The room fell silent. Some exchanged glances. Others didn't dare look up. One CFO tried to pivot back to Q2 projections, but Lucas wasn't listening. His mind was still at home or what he was trying to make into one. Eli had been staying at Lucas's penthouse, slowly making it his own. A new toothbrush beside Lucas's. Small shoes next to leather dress shoes. Pajama tops tangled with tailored shirts. And at night, bedtime had become their ritual. Lucas would read, awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. The Gruffalo, Where the Wild Things Are, whatever Eli picked. Eli would listen, head tucked under Lucas's arm, eyes heavy with sleep. And Lucas would sit there long after the boy had drifted off, stunned by how natural it felt. Not easy, but right. The man who used to leave the office at midnight now left by 6. The world hadn't ended. It had just shifted. Started with a phone call from a name he hadn't seen in almost 8 years. Marina Caldwell. Lucas stared at the caller ID for a full minute, heart thudding. He was in the middle of helping Eli with math homework, something about fractions and pizza slices, but suddenly the room felt airless. He answered. Her voice was shaky. Lucas. I didn't know if I should call. But I heard. About Eli's. Lucas's throat tightened. Where have you been? She didn't answer that. Instead, she said, Can we meet? They chose a quiet cafe downtown. Marina was already there when he arrived, thinner, older, but still holding that same mix of fire and fear behind her eyes. She looked down when he sat. I'm sorry. Lucas said nothing. I never meant to disappear, she whispered. When I found out I was pregnant, you were already gone. In Hong Kong, building your empire. You could have written, he said. Called. Anything. I was scared, she admitted. And angry. And then it got complicated. My health. Finos. I thought I could handle it alone. I did. For 7 years. Until I couldn't anymore. She looked up, her eyes glassy. I wasn't abandoning him, Lucas. I was saving him from me. Lucas sat back, stunned. This woman, the woman he'd once almost asked to marry, had been holding back a truth that reshaped everything. Eli hadn't just dropped into his life. He'd been left at the edge of a long, painful decision. One made by a mother who had run out of options. Lucas felt something crack open inside him. Not just anger, but a reckoning. After the meeting with Marina, Lucas didn't go back to the office. He drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, Eli asleep in the back seat from school pickup, arms wrapped around his backpack like a lifeline. Eventually, Lucas pulled into the driveway of his estate and just sat in the car, staring at the steering wheel. Everything Marina said spun in his head, not just the apology, but the weight of the last 7 years she'd carried alone. He kept picturing her shaking hands, the catch in her voice when she said, I thought I was saving him. Later that night, after Eli had eaten and bathed and curled up in bed with his nightlight on, Lucas stood outside the door watching him sleep. The boy's breathing was soft. His hair curled slightly at the edges, and the stuffed tiger Lucas had bought him sat curled under his arm. Lucas stepped inside, sat beside the bed, and stayed. Not because he had to, not because he was afraid the boy would wake up alone again, but because for the first time in years he wanted to. The boardroom could wait. The empire could wait. Lucas Thorne, billionaire, was no longer running from responsibility. He was walking straight into it. One quiet night at a time. The next morning, Lucas surprised everyone, especially his assistant, by walking into the office with Eli. Not just for the morning. The entire day. He cleared the second half of his schedule, converted the conference room into a makeshift playroom with help from HR, and sat through meetings with a 7-year-old quietly coloring beside him. The staff was stunned. The press? Even more so. Photos leaked of Lucas walking out of the building holding a child's backpack in one hand and Eli in the other. Speculation exploded. Was it a nephew? A godchild? Lucas said nothing. But that night after dinner, after Eli was in bed and the house quieted to its usual polished silence, Lucas did something he hadn't done in years. He called his father. The two hadn't spoken in almost a decade, not since Lucas built his empire without a single dollar of family wealth. Now he needed answers. Did you know? Lucas asked, voice tight. There was a pause on the line. A breath. I suspected, the older man said. But I figured you'd be too proud to want the truth. Lucas nearly threw the phone. But instead, he let the silence speak for him. Because this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about Eli. And the promise he hadn't made yet, but already meant. Lucas met her at the cafe exactly 1 block from where she used to live. Harper sat at the corner table, same as always, only now her hands trembled when she lifted her coffee. He didn't sit down right away. He watched her. Studied her face like he used to in law school, back when everything between them was messy but full of fire. Now the fire was smoke. But the embers remained. I should have told you, she said before he even asked. Lucas sat. You disappeared, he said, tone even but cold. One day we were planning Europe, the next, I found out I was pregnant the same week you took that hedge fund job in Singapore, she cut in. You were unreachable. I was reachable, he growled. I was terrified, she admitted. I didn't want to be someone you resented. I didn't want Eli to be a burden to a man chasing skyscrapers. He looked at her long and hard. Then, he's not a burden. I know that now, Harper whispered. But I didn't know you then. There it was. The truth. Not neat. Not clean. But real. Lucas didn't storm off. He didn't yell. He just nodded. We start over, he said. For him. And for the first time in years, Harper saw the version of Lucas she used to love, not the tycoon, not the brand, but the man. The week after that cafe meeting, things didn't magically fix themselves. There were hard talks. Missed calls. Tears that came without warning. But Lucas showed up every morning, every night. He helped Eli with homework, took him to school, even learned how to braid hair for dress-up days. And Harper? She allowed herself slowly to lean in again. She told Lucas about the years alone. The birthdays missed. The small victories and the quiet breakdowns. She told him what it meant to survive without him and what it cost. He listened. Really listened. Then one evening, Lucas took them both to the penthouse, not the cold bachelor's fortress it once was, but now filled with color. Toys. Plants. Life. Eli darted from room to room. Harper stood still in the living room, unsure. Until Lucas reached into a drawer and pulled out a photo, a baby's first picture, printed and folded. I carried this, he said. Even before I knew it was mine. Her breath caught. Then Lucas knelt. Not with a ring. Not yet. But with something rarer. I can't fix the past, he said. But I want to be your future, both of yours. Eli appeared at the door, holding 2 capes and 1 crown. Dad, he said, grinning, you forgot your kingdom. Lucas laughed genuinely. Then looked at Harper. Ready, he asked. She nodded. And together they stepped into a new life. Not perfect, but honest. And this time they were building it side by side. The end. Or maybe just the real beginning.